Welcome to Bushy Park Estates, Tasmania, Australia. I'm Owen Johnston, Head of Sales and Marketing. Fresh hop, wet hop, harvest ales. We use these terms interchangeably to describe any beer style brewed with unkilned, freshly picked hops. Every harvest, we make green hops available. It's a great way for us to connect with innovative brewers who want to know exactly where their hops come from, and to remind drinkers of the link between Australian brewing and Australian agriculture. G'day guys.
G'day Owen.
We're teaming up with Scott Overdorf and Alex Grant from Hobart Brewing Co. to walk you through our green hop program and the nuances of brewing with green hops. Scott, it's not your first time on the farm and you're a great supporter of Australian varieties.
Yes, our core range of Hobart Brewing Company beers all feature Australian hops grown here at Bushy Park Estates. But harvest is a rare opportunity for us to show a different side of hops through green hop beers.
Pretty obvious that as farmers we live for this time of year. Does it resonate with you?
Yeah, as brewers we get just as excited as you guys do. It's really great to come out, meet the team and collect our green hops in person. Since you never really know when the hops are going to ripen and be ready for collection, our brewing schedule becomes a little loose around this time of year.
So picking up the green hops is the easy part. Hopefully you've got an empty tank.
Yeah, the provenance and unpredictability of the green hop program is what allows us to tell a story about the beer and give our drinkers a new sensory experience every year.
Guys, thanks very much for coming out to collect the green hops today. It's always a pleasure to host you on the farm at this time of year, and I look forward to joining you down at the brewery for the next stage of the process to see if we can create that new sensory experience for the drinker. We're in your world now, guys, so what's the plan?
So we've picked up our hops from the farm and taken them straight back to the brewery. And there are a couple of really uniquely challenging factors to brewing with green hops, but that's half the fun.
Yeah, they're less concentrated than pellets, so you need more of them to achieve the same level of flavor and aroma. Green hops also provide a distinctly fresh, vibrant, and herbaceous flavor profile without the bitterness you get when using pellets. And because they're 80% water, they tend to expire quickly, which is why we need to use them within 24 to 48 hours of harvest.
Can you tell me what hops you're using and into what sort of beer style are you trying?
So today we're using fresh Cascade straight from the farm. We're hoping for some really nice, bright citrus characters and chucking them in an American-style pale ale.
And we're going to add the green hops to during the whirlpool stage of our brew.
Fantastic. And does that take any modification to your normal process?
It's a big deviation because what we do is we remove all the grain from our mash tun, we give it a full CIP and basically turn it into a big hop back. And at the end of the boil, we chuck all the fresh hops into it and transfer the wort from our kettle on top of the hops in our mash tun.
When people think of our hops, we want them to think of uniquely Aussie flavours. Green, fresh hop beers are just another way we present choice and diversity. If you see a green hop beer on the menu, try it. They only come around once a year in very limited volumes. G'day, thanks for tuning in and taking a deep dive into our green hop program. Joining me today, Scott Overdorf, co-founder and head brewer at the Hobart Brewing Company. HBC's been brewing since 2014 and in its current location in the historic Red Shed down on Hobart's working waterfront since 2016.
That's right.
Thanks very much for taking the time to come and have a chat about green hops, mate.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I've got to say, it's always a lot of fun out on the farm at this time of the year. So I don't know whether the audience, sees it, but we had a bit of fun filming that, and it actually came through like a little bit more professional than maybe it was out there. So.
Well, nothing marks the passage of time better for a brewer than harvest time.
It's like counting the winters, isn't it? It's like another harvest down. So today we're going to have a wide-ranging chat on the practicalities of brewing with green hops, some of the flavours we see, some of the factors we consider when we're whether it's conceiving a flavour or executing a brew. For those of us joining live, please, if you have any questions, leave them in the chat box and we'll try and get to those. But first, Scotto, tell me a bit about your brewing background and how do we come to be sitting here today in Hobart, Tasmania?
Several decades ago, I found myself living in a small German ski town, Garmisch-Partenkirchen, where I had my beer epiphany. The Budweiser drinking American, who's all of a sudden surrounded by all these beer styles I'd never heard of.
That's you, the Budweiser drinking American.
That was it, yeah. And I went back home, started home brewing. Hobby became a passion, became an obsession. Late in life, I found myself unemployed by choice and had always thought of becoming a pro brewer. So one day I decided to walk around to different breweries around Boulder, Colorado. Knocked on the door of 8 different breweries, got 7 no's. Oscar Blues said, yep, come back tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. And so I started with Oscar Blues on their canning line. Spent time doing that before moving over to Mountain Sun, where I joined a team of 6 other brewers. But I had also traveled to Tassie a number of years before, and the day didn't go by in Colorado where I wasn't thinking of Tassie, so finally I convinced my Australian partner that it was time to move over here. And
fantastic.
Yep.
Here we are. And you've had a few different roles since you've been here in Tassie?
Yes. Literally got off the Spirit of Tassie, drove to Dover, Tasmania, near the end of the road, where an ex-rugby player from Queensland had purchased the Dover pub and had an idea of building a brewery, which I got hired to start. And at the same time, I met you along with your team at Brew, and would come up to town on Fridays to keep in touch. And ironically, and literally the day I got the call from this rugby player / pub owner that he'd run out of money and the project was finished, you contacted me that afternoon and said, would you like to come up to Brew? And yeah.
And the rest is history, yeah.
And
from Brew to Hobart Brewing Co.
Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic.
So one day at Brew, Dave McGill, then head brewer and general manager, asked me to come up to the office, and I was scratching my head, wondering what I had done in the previous 24 hours that may not have been the right thing. And he said, listen, a guy came in yesterday with a business plan to start a brewery, and I wouldn't be a mate if I didn't let you know, because there might be an opportunity here for you.
For you.
That's
great.
right.
Fantastic.
And then met that Brendan Parnell, a lawyer here in town, and showed me his plan. Tried to talk him out of it and failed, and here we are a number of years later.
Fantastic. Running a successful brew pub down on the busy Hobart waterfront. It's good, it's worked.
Yeah, it's been a great 5 years.
So you've done a lot of green hop brewing at this point. You've done some out at Moo, and you've done one every year at HBC.
That's right. Every year except for last year.
Every year except for last year. Yeah. Do you have a highlight? Do you have a favourite green hop beer that you've made in the past?
I think there are 2 that stand out. There was a dark ale that we brewed at Brew, and that beer particularly stands out for a reason that, everybody thinks of fresh hop beers. We got to drink them fresh because the hops, that flavor profile and aroma is going to drop off. where I think that the Mood Dark that year, the harvest beer, actually got better after a couple of months, and the malt and the hops came together and really with good complexity. And then my favorite at Hobart Brewing was the first beer that we brewed, which was a Hoppy Saison, which we used Galaxy.
Yep. I think there was Galaxy in that brown as well. Do you remember the other hop?
I thought it was Galaxy, and at the time they were still growing Willamette.
Oh yeah, yep. Out at
Bush.
HPA, yeah, out at Bushy, yeah, great.
Might have been the last year they were. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, excellent. And it is an interesting comment about that development of the flavour profile. I certainly recall in my experience seeing the Cascade first harvest, some of the very first wet hop beers in the modern times here in Australia, and I thought that their flavour profile sort of integrated and came together a bit more over time. And I think it makes sense in some ways that a beer will level out once it's in pack for a while.
Yep.
Those darker malt bills do tend to work a bit longer in the pack as well. So when you're considering approaching a harvest beer, approaching recipe design, are you coming at it from that sort of hop impact and thinking about hops, or are you thinking about longevity, you're thinking about the final beer? How do you approach writing a green hop recipe?
Well, I think for us it's a once a year opportunity to brew something really unique that's going to be different every year. And so we're going for a focus on the hop, and so we want an impact from the hop, and so we're also is there a beer style out there that we haven't had an opportunity to brew yet that would be a good choice that would showcase a hop, and then we kind of pair the two. Though having said that, we've probably used Galaxy more often than not in our fresh hop beers, because of that impact that Galaxy has.
Yeah, for sure. So, we've talked a bit in the rest of the virtual program with other brewers about how they approach hop trials and whatnot. And some have this diverse recipe approach, and others have a very, repeatable recipe that they put the hops on top to see the difference. Am I right in saying that you throw different beer styles in there for this harvest consideration? What hops are available? What are we going to make that'll taste great?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We mix it up every year. We use the same process with the way that we use the green hops, but the beer itself and the recipe we write is a different style and not something we've brewed before.
Yeah. Let's get into some process considerations on the day. Obviously, I've been looking forward to this conversation for the whole harvest, right? This is where we actually get to talk about making porridge, This is I think one of the most interesting sessions we're going to do. So when considering the actual brew day for a green hop beer, we've seen a few different scenarios both at the Moo Brew times. Can you describe what you do at HBC currently?
Yeah, so what we do is we're gonna, at the end of the boil, we're gonna transfer the wort into our mash tun. So we're gonna take our mash tun, turn it into a hop back, and that process actually starts a few days before, because we don't get under our plates in our mash tun except for once a year. And so we use the hop harvest as that reminder, hey, let's take the mash tun completely apart, give it a scrub, put it back together, and then on brew day, after the lauter is complete and we're in boil, we'll get the grain out and we'll do a full CIP on that mash tun, including an acid cycle to prep it for using it as a hop back. And then we try to remember how we, because we have stainless, it's all
hard piped underneath.
It's hard piped. Yeah. It's not hard piped to send wort back to the mash tun.
It's supposed to flow one way through and out.
That's right. So we spend a bit of time scratching our heads. Where do we break it down?
Breaking a few triclovers here and there.
Yeah. And putting a T on with some valves and soft hoses.
Yeah. So let's say the wort's in the boil. lauter tun, mash tuns ready to go, doors closed, hops go in. There's no wort in there at this point. Do you see the hops sitting, I don't know, like 4 inches, 6 inches, a foot deep?
It's at least 6 to 8 inches because what we've developed as a process over the years is we take 10 kilos of fresh hops, no matter what beer we're brewing, no matter what the bitterness level is. We take 10 kilos, put them into the kettle at flame out. We use brew-in-a bags. We can get 5 kilos of wet hops into a brew-in-a bag. So we put 2 bags, 10 kilos total, at flame out. And then the rest of the hops that we're using go into the mash tun, and usually it's 6 to 8.
Yeah.
And in the case of this year's beer, it was 50 kilos of hops in a 20 hectoliter brew.
Yeah. And pretty aromatic at that point, is it?
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. You just want to dive in and just roll around in them.
And so you're throwing in 10 kilos in at flame out. Is that trying to address some layering in of different capturing different compounds to survive through into the final product?
Yeah, it's a
or just a hint of bitterness. Is there any pellets in the boil for bitterness?
No,
or no?
We don't use any pellets in our green hops. 100% green hop beer. But that 10 kilos at flame out we're more confident of the bitterness we're going to get from that addition than the bitterness we're going to get from our mash tun. And so it's a bit of a hedge there, but it's also a layering of flavor and aromatics.
It makes sense because I think one of the common failings in green hop is that sometimes they don't address the basics, which is this bitter-sweet balance. Some are too bitter, and others, of course, finish with a higher Plato's based on recipe or whatever, but they don't have the backbone of bitterness to make them enjoyable in that way. So I think it's pretty sensible to try and hedge your position there and layer some in simply to make sure that there's enough backbone. Even at 2.5 Plato finishing or something like that, you're still going to need some bitterness in there to carry
That's
the
right.
day.
Yeah, have that drinkability.
That's right. So you're about to knock over. Do you come in underneath the plates and soak in and start steeping, or do you come in through a side port in on top of the hops?
No, we're essentially underletting, and so coming up from the bottom, and as soon as we have the wort kind of not necessarily all the way through the hops, we'll turn the rakes on and slowly stir it as well.
So agitate it just gently.
To make sure the hops are breaking up and we're getting saturation.
Not for any other purpose, not trying to really, really mix them.
No,
just
going really slow rate.
And do you, through this process, are you, 2 questions I guess, are you aiming for some residence time on the wort, knock the wort in, sit it and steep for 10, 20 minutes, or? No, we're I guess our process is sort of, has partly been influenced by Brian Watson, the good George. When our kid is a DME, and at the time he was involved with setting up DMEs, and he wasn't present when we commissioned, but he happened to be in Tassie for the hop harvest, and actually our first harvest beer was probably our 10th brew on the kit. And so he was really keen to come by and see how the setup was working. And so he joined us on the brew day of our first fresh hop. And we talked at length about that because, I was looking for some residence time. He's like, no, you got to be careful. You have too much residence time. You run the risk of a little too much of that green, fresh, long cutting chlorophyll flavor. And so we hem and hawed, and finally we said, okay, from that 10 kilos that's in the kettle, it's going to take us 20 minutes to move it over to the lauter tun. So those hops have 20 minutes residence, and then the hops in the mash tun already have 20 minutes. And so we just start knocking out. As soon as that whirlpool's 20
finished,
minutes in, and then another 20 minutes out, or
30 to 40.
Yeah,
so they're still getting 60 minutes of residence without any kind of stand.
Yeah, so there's really no need for standing. That's right. And do you do any sort of sensory to see what's going on? Do you taste the wort that's
No.
like in pumping out stuff? No, because
What we get's what we get.
exactly. It's always a bit of a moot point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you can't undo it, and you're still going to have to pump out, aren't you? So
No, it just makes me more nervous.
Yeah.
And I'd have less air than I do.
maybe I'm a nervous guy. I don't know. That's excellent. So yeah, really just no steeping time, just the pump in and pump out. A little turn on the rakes just to make sure that there's adequate saturation.
Yeah, because we've over the years we've done 2 fresh hop collaborations with Modus Operandi when Dennis DeBear was head brewer there, and he'd be like, do you have any more we can chuck in? And we were tasting the wort from the kettle, and you not the mash tun, like we said, it was it's we already have what we have, but going from the kettle, we just wanted to have an idea of the bitterness level, and it's like, oh, it's plenty bitter, maybe we have too many, and he's like, no, let's chuck in more. And so it was that's where you just have to throw caution to the wind and go for it. And that's part of the fresh hop experience, is you're building your own knowledge base based on experiential learning on a once a year sort of learning curve. That's a long time.
Yeah, that's right. Once a year.
Yeah.
So, I guess in that sense of that experiential learning and whatnot, do you think you're better positioned now to get consistent results?
Yes, because we get consistent results.
Yes, but
yeah, there's still a lot. There's so many variables that you can't predict. The end result. So that's the biggest variable of all. You sit down, you write the recipe, you're brewing this style, you're using that hop, but you still don't know what you're going to have in the glass. But where we do have confidence is in that level of bitterness, because to me that's what really impacts the level of drinkability. Nobody wants a beer that's overly bitter, and then if it's cloyingly sweet, that's
even worse.
Yeah. So. Over the years, I think at Moo Brew we were starting at 4 grams a liter, or a ratio of 4 to 1 wet to pellets. When we started did our first brew at Hobart Brewing, we went up to 5. Next year we went up to 6. Now we're on 8 to 1.
More hops.
Yeah, yeah. And so we're pretty comfortable with that 8 to 1 ratio, and that's regardless of the style. It's just like that guarantees you impact, right? 8 to 1. That's going to definitely get definitely
definitely going to get some impact.
Yeah.
Do you think it increases your chance, especially in this lauter ton as a hopback model? Do you think it increases your chances of vegetal chlorophyllic kind of extraction, those grippy phenolic off flavors?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the science says that with a higher gravity, more dense wort, and even more massive hops, you're actually losing, your utilization is decreasing. So I like to think that you have that same effect with that, the vegetal
problem compounds.
Yeah.
It seems like the beneficial compounds are on a diminishing returns basis, but problem compounds just go like this, right?
Yeah, that could be.
That's the brewer's challenge, isn't it?
But and that's something that you at our scale, you can only pick up sensory at the end of the project.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess let's fast forward. We've knocked out of the brew house. We're in tank.
Yep.
Have you considered wet dry hopping?
Over the years, I've been of 2 minds. At Moo, we used to wet dry hop, and I think we had good results. But that process evolved from the early days to the way they do it now, in a way that we couldn't duplicate at ours. And so at the beers that we've brewed to date, we've used enough hops in the hop back in the mash tun at that 8 to 1 ratio that with the 2 years we brewed IPAs, they were definitely had plenty of hop character without a dry wet hop. But this year we brewed a a pale ale, American style pale ale with Cascade hops. You know, it's kind of wanted to poke the bear on top of the hill with their first harvest, partly because Cascade's first harvest was one of the first wet hop beers I remember drinking, you know, nearly 20 years ago. And we just happened to get our hands on some hops post-fermentation that we hadn't been planning on, and it's like, well, we can make use of those hops. Let's chuck them in. And so one of the things that we've always been concerned about was how, because of the water content of the fresh hops, they're very incredibly buoyant. So how do you put them in your fermenter as a wet dry hop and actually get them
to
submerged,
saturate, to actually get liquid through.
Exactly, to actually extract, you know, the compounds. And so I was a bit dubious, but we got brewing of bags, you know, filled the bags up, put a butterfly valve in each bag just because we could. And we were going to tie them up, you know, the string from the bag. I was going to put a triclover above the spray ball in the fermenter, and then, you know, clamp off the rope from each bag. And the level of the beer in the tank was too low, so it wouldn't reach. So I'm like, they're going to float anyway. So I just chucked the bags in with the idea that I'd come back 48 hours later and pull them out before we started the cold conditioning. And I came back, opened up the tank, and the hops were gone. And so that dispelled that myth of
the buoyancy issue.
Yeah, so then that was a Friday afternoon special, so then I had to stress all weekend to because we were scheduled to transfer the beer the following week as to whether the bags of the wet hops were wrapped around my racking port and, you know, submerged deep enough that they blocked
the dump valve and everything.
Yeah.
No question of saturation at this point, though, so that's a win. We'll get the flavour. Can we get the beer?
Yeah, but then that made me stress about, we talked about the residency time in the mash tun and extracting all that. So I had in my mind, you know, 48 hours wet dry hop out, you know, because of the bad compounds we don't want in there. So now they're going to be in there at least 5 days, so more than double that time. So I had a bit of a stress about that as well.
Yeah. And so, you know, there's a few technical challenges in dry hopping. We've spoken about those in other sessions. Did you get the opportunity to consider how wet hop and hop creep might interact?
Well, yeah, you know, it's funny you say that because, no, I didn't. And we haven't had an issue with hop creep in the past because we haven't done a post-fermentation addition with a green hop beer. But this time, I guess we got a little excited with the availability of these hops. And to be honest, the timing that we got them was not the right time to be adding them. The beer had already completely fermented. The ambient temperature in the tank had already dropped down to around 17 degrees. It was ready to be start cold conditioning, but the idea of adding 30 more kilos of green hops to this pale ale was just too enticing, so we went ahead with it anyway.
You've been brought unstuck by your own more hops.
That's right. So you know, it's going to be. The beer was kegged last week. It's on tap. It's drinking well. There are no signs of you know, a secondary diacetyl spike at this point. So no evidence of hop creep.
Fantastic. So American Pale made with wet Cascade from Bushy Park. How's the and the secret edition?
Yeah.
And how's the flavour profile? How's the actual beer come out?
Yeah, it's come out. Well, as we talked about earlier up at the farm, you know, that the fresh hops, no matter what you're using, it's going to have that fresh and vibrant character, bit herbaceous. It's not the characters that you would expect if you're using Cascade pellets. But there's an interesting kind of tropical fruit character that's almost like an exotic style fruit you'd get from Thailand or somewhere else in Asia that's like a lychee or you know, something else, but almost like a candied fruitiness as well. But there's also, you know, a touch of woodiness. You know, we were chatting earlier about potentially the higher in myrcene And a couple of the comments we've had is this pale ale drinks a bit like a lager, and whether some of the green hop flavors are influencing that.
Yeah, because we know, of the oil fraction, of the compounds that make up the oil, the total oil, myrcene is the highest fraction. It doesn't have great survivability, but in the wet hop setting, it's such a preponderance of myrcene there that I feel like they've all got like a woody myrcene note to them, and it's almost, for me, a style-defining green hop character. It's sort of, you can tell if there's been a nice blend of pellet and green hop, or if it's just green hops in there. And I think it's almost like truth in advertising. You need a bit of that cut grass, a bit of the myrcene-driven woodiness. But then, like in this whole visioning exercise of trying to deliver a flavour, you're making an APA with Cascade. Everyone, probably our audience, being professional brewers, is going to think, oh yes, I know what that's going to taste like.
Right.
And it's actually quite different. It really is.
Yeah, it's almost like a different beer, and again, that's part of the, it's the challenge, it's the excitement, because you set out on this path of brewing a new beer, but through experience you can get predictable results on most other brews you do, but with a green hop beer, that's out the window. Start with
a vision and see how you go.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's we sort of talk through the process and the final beer. How do you value this harvest beer concept, and why do you, you're very committed to it? You do it almost every year. Why is it important to you, and why is it something that you think your beer drinker values and needs to know about?
I think because of the connection brewing has with agriculture, and for us being in Hobart and the majority of commercially grown hops in Australia being grown just up the road from us, that's something that's really kind of special for us. We've built our core beers around Australian hops, and so for us to be able to come up to the farm once a year, I said in the beginning, it marks the passage of time, and so I like that connection, being able to come up to the farm, see the harvest in action, see some people we see once a year, and but also I think with the punters, it's giving them again a once a year really unique opportunity to drink a beer that they're not going to get from anybody else. They won't be able to get it from us a second time. It's a one-time opportunity to try something really different and fresh and vibrant, and it may not always hit expectation, but it's you're learning about as a brewer, hops are probably they're my favorite ingredient in beer, because they're so expressive, and the way green hops are expressed versus pellets are completely different. And so for me, it's just sharing that with the punter to say this is what's grown up the road, this is what we can do with it. This was fresh, it was picked, we brewed with it within 24 hours, here you go.
Do you get feedback from your bar staff that customers are looking at the menu boards, oh yeah, harvest ale?
They go straight to it.
Really?
Yeah, so it is, and at our tap room at the brewery, we've made a thing of, we have a core range of beers, but we also brew seasonal beers, and the harvest beer is one of those beers.
In the calendar?
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
And so people, have that expectation that we'll have it.
You've been brewing here in Tassie for a long time. Has the conversation from the drinkers, the word punter might not be too familiar to some of our audience in the US and over in Europe, so it's just a colloquialism for drinker. Do you think the conversation with the punters has changed over the bar? Do you feel like they're coming from a higher knowledge base about hops now? So when they see a harvest beer, they ask a better question?
Yes and no. I think for the average punter drinker, they're interested in the variety of the hop, and then the next question may be, what other beers do you brew that has that same hop?
Yeah.
and and what are the difference in the characters between that beer and this one that I'm drinking as a harvest beer. But I think with locally, we were mentioning Cascade First Harvest. I mean, they were brewing that a long time ago. So I think for local drinkers, it's something they're familiar with. And
you're right. Like 2002 maybe for Cascade First Harvest in this setting, and then the Bushy Park Estates we've been growing hops in Tasmania since 1803. And since joining the hop company. It's amazing how much that the history and the general knowledge of hop permeates through the local area. And I know that it's the same in other hop growing regions around the world. You go another 100 k's out of the hop growing region, nothing, zero. But for the communities around our regions, the base level of knowledge. Oh yes, my grandmother used to catch the train up to Bushy Park and pick hops, or that the connection with the hop growing industry is really strong, and I think we benefit from it here in Hobart for sure. Great. Well, thanks very much for taking the time to come down and join us, and I hope our audience has got something out of a bit of a deep dive into the processes you have down at Hobart Brewing Co. I'm sorry to say for everyone watching this, and especially playing back the recordings, I'm going to be able to go down there on Friday afternoon and have one of those beers. So I'm so sorry you can't join me. But Scotto, thank you. I look forward to having you on the farm again next year.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you.
Cheers. A huge thank you to everyone who was part of this session. If you missed some of the action because you couldn't understand our Aussie accents, a recording will be uploaded to hops.com.au/virtual-harvest. For further information, please email info@hops.com.au, and we hope to welcome you all on farm again soon.